directed toward the president, but also toward Billy Graham, underlining also toward Billy Graham where you pencil in great. And my question specifically relates to exactly what mentality it is in the White House that goes ahead and indicates good when the word violence is mentioned, when obscenity is mentioned, which violence and which obscenity is to be directed against the President of the United States. How in any way can that be good?
I remember what happened after the testimony was over. I got a telephone call from my father saying, he said, "Lowell, do you have any security?" I said, "No." He said, "'Cause I'll tell you," he said, "I watched that and that man hates you." And he said, "You could see it in his eyes." And I have no doubt that that Bob Haldeman did. I mean, but again with Haldeman and Ehrlichman both, these men held enormously responsible positions. And they could have stopped all this. And they didn't stop all this. And they were in league with the president.
There was a false sense, I say false from any objective point of view, of patriotism, of being the true Americans. They all wore the little American flag in their lapels. They had no sense of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. They believed that dissent, people who might march and say things against the administration, were subversive, were people who were un-American, rather than that this is the very thing America's all about, which is the right of the people to dissent.
Questions about the White House commitment to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights would be asked of John Ehrlichman. They would be asked by Sam Ervin, the senator who kept a copy of the Constitution in his pocket.
Yes, sir. And you referred to a certain statute. Now, this statute has nothing to do with burglary. It only has to do
with the United States Constitution, Mr. Chairman.
No, sir. Not the purpose of the statute. The Constitution takes care of itself, even though the statute sets out. This statute has only to do with the interception or disclosure of wire or oral communications prohibited.
No, sir, it also has to do with the Congress recognition of what the Constitution provides with relation to the powers of the President.
Is there a single thing in there that says that the President can authorize burglaries?
Well, let's read it, Mr. Chairman.
It says here that this statute, which makes it unlawful to intercept and disclose wire or other communications, says that this shall not interfere with the constitutional power of the president to
do anything necessary
to protect the country against 5 things.
Yes, sir.
The first says actual or potential attack or other hostile acts of a foreign power. You don't claim that
let's get down
burglarizing Dr. Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office to get his opinion, his recorded opinion of the intellectual or psychological state of his patients is an attack by foreign powers, do you?
Well, we could have a lot of fun with all 4 of these till we get to the operative one, Mr. Chairman.
May I get into this? May I get into this legal debate?
Well, yes, you claim that, Mr. Wilson.
Then you read this end of that sentence, which says, "or to protect national security information against foreign intelligence activities."
Against foreign intelligence activities. The foreign intelligence activities had nothing to do with the opinion of Ellsberg's psychiatrist about his intellectual or emotional or psychological state.
How do you know that, Mr. Chairman?
Because I can understand the English language as my mother tongue.
Mr. Chairman, may I answer that? The CIA must have thought that it had some foreign relationship because they had done an ineffective profile on Ellsberg.
Well, the CIA had no business doing that because the law prohibits them from having anything to do with internal security.
Yeah. Sir, you wouldn't consider that foreign intelligence activity as a...
No, this was a domestic intelligence activity. These people were from diplomas, from the White House.
Yes, but
we had a man passing secrets to the Soviet government.
Well, Ellsberg's psychiatrist wasn't doing that.
I think when John Ehrlichman testified before the Irvin Committee, he made the best case I think it was possible to make at that time as to why the president had the authority to authorize an action like took place in Dr. Fielding's office to go after those documents. Senator Ervin had no tolerance with that defense or that response. I don't think any other member of the Ervin Committee had any tolerance for it as well. But at the time, in the hearings in 1973, I think John did the best he could to try to explain the logic of it and what we had thought in 1971. Now, this was before some of us, and myself specifically, ended up rejecting that argument, but I think he did as good a job as you could with a very, very weak case.
Now, that is precisely what the president was undertaking. He was not undertaking it under this statute. He was undertaking it under that constitutional power which you gentlemen and the other members of the Congress recognized in the statute.
Yes, I helped draw that statute. I'm familiar with that statute. And there's not a syllable in there that says the president can suspend the Fourth Amendment or authorize burglary.
Finally, I think it was John Ehrlichman who said, look, Senator, he said, everybody does it. Well, in other words, they'd run out of excuses. They'd run out of cover-up. They'd run out of lies. It was just right out there in black and white. Everybody does it. Well, if we, and by we I mean if as a country, we had accepted that, then you had a whole new ballgame as to the quality of government politics in the United States. Everybody doesn't do it.
You authorized this break-in, didn't you? I was trying to...
No, sir, I did not.
You affirmed it yesterday, and a memorandum that I saw, you said it was your signature, provided it could not be traced.
No, sir, I submit that is not what that memorandum
says. Where's the
says.
document? I'll read the language. Covert operation to be undertaken to examine all of the medical files still held by Ellsberg's psychiatrist. How do you think you could examine all the medical files without a break-in?
Well, it has occurred to me since, because I've been asked this question before, that one way that it could be done is through false pretenses, through perfectly honest means, one doctor to another by recruiting the assistance of another psychiatrist or of a doctor or of someone who could get at them that way. And it simply was not in contemplation that a break-in as such would be engaged in.
You're a lawyer, and I understand you're a good one.
Well, I'm certainly not a constitutional lawyer, Senator.
Well, you remember when we were in law school, we studied a famous principle of law that came from England and also is well known in this country, that no matter how humble a man's cottage is, that even the King of England can't enter without his consent?
I'm afraid that's been considerably eroded over the years, hasn't it?
Down in my country, we still think it's a pretty legitimate principle of law.
That story had this town by the throat. Inside your office, if you went from floor to floor and corridor to corridor, you could follow the hearings without missing a sentence. Same thing if you got in a cab to go to the Hill. The cab had it on. If you, when you got to the Hill, you went to the offices offices all had it on. At 6 or 7:30, at night, you began getting calls from your friends who were going home from work, wanting to know what the hell we had the next day because they couldn't stand it.
My testimony was and continues to be.
It was too big to get your arms around. The President of the United States doing this?
Investigatory means.
If the president could authorize a covert break-in, and you don't know exactly where that power would be limited, you don't think it could include murder or other crimes beyond covert break-ins, do you?
Oh, I don't know where the line is, Senator.
This business of attacking the president.